November 8th meeting. We have a couple of items today on the dockets. First, I'll just note for the record that Sarah Landford and Emily Camardo and myself are present in person, and that Commissioners Kristen Clegg and Kirat Mukherjee are also attending, but remotely. I also want to note that, actually, I'm not sure I can say this yet. So I just want to welcome those joining us remotely who may or may not eventually join us in a more official capacity. Thank you for coming tonight. We have one public comment scheduled, and in interesting and delightful fashion, well, maybe not delightful for you, Sarah. It is a commissioner with public comment. So Sarah, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, everyone. My name's Sarah. I'm coming to you in my capacity as a tenant because I brought this issue up at the last meeting and David suggested I submit public comments. That is what I want to do. I live at 500 South Lane. It's a 15-unit building off of Columbia Pike, between 15 and Columbia Pike. It has 15 units, and it's managed by Gates Hudson. And in May, we had a tenant move in who has just completely disregarded a lot of different aspects of the lease. But I think the most concerning one for me, and I would note for other folks in my building that I've managed to talk about this out of a 15-unit building, is that she smokes a lot, like a lot. And I've seen her smoke in the stairwell. We share a wall, and so that my unit smells like smoke. And my closet backs up to her apartment, so just a lot of my clothes now smell like smoke. That's kind of the most concerning issue, just because I think it's a safety issue as well as like a fire hazard issue. The other issue is that she's very disrespectful of common spaces. She uses we don't have that many common spaces, but she uses the laundry room a lot to like make coffee, and then there's coffee inside the laundry machines to make ramen. There's been ramen inside the laundry machines. So I've communicated and documented all of this with the property managers, Gates Hudson, since May. So I have a lot of photos, a lot of email evidence of me communicating these issues with them. But because my property manager just is so uncommunicative, I'm not confident that they're addressing the issue. They've told me that they're taking action, and I get that they can't disclose anything beyond that. But the reason I wanted to make public comment is just I don't believe them because of just a history of them not responding to my emails. So I found that they only respond to my emails. They won't answer my calls, they won't answer my emails, and that's not just because it's me. I think that's goes for other tenants in the building. So it's frustrating, and I'm hoping that you could send a letter on behalf of the commission to both the property managers and the building owners so that they know I'm not letting it go. I know that there's not a lot they can do outside of the legal action. I just want to make sure that that's actually happening and that they're not just telling me that to placate me. So those are my issues.
Yeah, thanks for your public comment. Kristen, I see you've got your hand raised, so go ahead.
Yeah, my question is a couple. First off, are you a non-smoking building, and is it written in the lease?
Yes, it is everywhere in the lease.
Pardon me?
It's everywhere in the lease, like multiple different parts of the lease say that we're a non-smoking building.
Okay. And then when you're writing to the property manager, is there anybody else, the owners, have you been able to write to the owners?
Yes, yeah. And the owners respond, and I find that when the owners are copied on the emails, I do get a response from the property managers. They've also said that they would clean the building more since this has happened, and that hasn't happened. They said they'd send the cleaning crew more often, and just one time.
Like smoke sort of cleaning, or?
Well, she also leaves like groceries and items in the stairwell. But like the Meaning I'm talking about like the coffee issues in the laundry room or the
Is there a coffee maker? I'm trying to figure out how she's making coffee.
I think it's because the electricity is off in her unit. So she does a lot of stuff in the laundry room because there are outlets there. So she'll like charge a phone, she'll make a pot of coffee with like a coffee maker that she has down there. That's since been removed by someone. I don't know if that was management or what.
The coffee maker is.
Yes.
Is her coffee maker?
That's weird.
I think it was her coffee maker because there was a trail of spilled coffee from the third floor to the coffee pot, like from her unit. So, which was another issue. I'm like, can you please come clean this up? Because no one could use the laundry room.
I imagine Emily has this follow-up question as well. How exactly does one cook ramen?
I think like on a hot plate.
I just needed.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
So.
Well,
It's a lot.
yeah, of course, that's ridiculous. It sounds like you said that the electricity's off in her.
I don't know. I'm making that assumption based on the fact that every time I drive by in the night, like there's never lights on from her unit from the outside. And I do think she's like charging her phone in the laundry room, which I can't imagine why you would do that unless the electricity is on. So I'm like very hesitant to bring this issue because I know people are going through their own struggles, whatever, but I think it's reached a point where a lot of people in the building are uncomfortable and we haven't had recourse from management, or, I mean, they tell us that they're doing something, but because so few people trust the property management company, I don't think anyone feels good about this situation.
How long have you lived there?
I have lived there for 2 years and some change.
Okay, and you started documenting complaints in
May.
Okay, and so the issues are all persisting to today, essentially.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Of course, I think that reach out to Gates Hudson and inquire. I think that added pressure might help. It's seems like a pretty clear-cut lease violation. So
I agree.
the only question that I have, and I don't actually know the answer to this, and maybe we can find that out by talking with code enforcement, is whether that is a safety violation that could be addressed by code enforcement. I don't know, maybe Roland, do you know the answer, or Hector? Okay, well, let's do two things. Let's internally reach out to code enforcement to ask whether the smoke issue is something that falls into their purview, if there's any action that they can take specifically related to it, and also reach out to Gates Hudson like we do with other public comments. And I know we've got some reports, some updates on previous complaints coming up later too. So
yeah, that sounds good.
Great. Any other comments from commissioners? Excellent.
Not for me, thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. So that's the end of public comment. We'll go straight into the Barcroft relocation plan. I believe you've got Mark Hannon from Gyre Lynch.
We need the minutes.
Oh, we can't. I see David Hildy. Are you stepping in for Mark, or?
Yeah. Mark's on, but I'm here I'm with Gyre Lynch as well.
Okay.
Giving the presentation tonight.
Well, welcome and please take it away.
Great. Well, thank you for having us tonight. Again, David Hildy, VP of Development with Gyre Lynch, overseeing the Barcroft project. Also have Mark Hannon on here as well. And then we have Hannah Jacobson, who's with Housing to Home, our relocation specialist for Barcroft. And then Gina Ramos and Sylvia Castillo, who are with our property management team. And so we're here tonight to talk about the relocation plan for our first phase at Barcroft. Just a quick refresher. You guys can see the intro slide here. Oh, wait, no, I got the wrong one. Okay, let me try again. Apologies. Try this one more time. Okay, sorry, I'll do a quick fix here. Again, just I'm doing this again. Barcroft. I know we've come before you previously, kind of talking big picture on Barcroft and the 1,335 units that we, in partnership with the county and Amazon, came together to acquire 2 years ago. And part of that was committing to all 1,335 units to have those number of units be at up to 60% affordability for 99 years. And so this is the first phase of that. So we're very excited to be moving forward with the renovations, and want to just walk you through just again, update on the project, and then an overview of the relocation plan that we are seeking to put before you for your comment. Again, we'll give a project overview, relocation plan summary, and just overall, just give you a site-wide affordability plan update as we're going through a broader process here. So this is map of Barcroft here. This is Columbia Pike north, to the north on the left side of the image. South George Mason Drives on the top, 4 Mile Run Drive on the south. And the first phase is these 5 buildings on the corner, highlighted here in the red maroon color. It's 5 buildings. These are garages here. They're also highlighted, totaling 93 units. We anticipate to start these renovations in Q2 of 2024. And this is, again, the first phase of our renovation program, where we'll be doing extensive renovations, upgrading kitchens, baths, bringing washer and dryers in unit, adding completely new heating systems and cooling systems that are controlled individually by each unit. In this phase, there are some 2 bedrooms that we are adding additions to create family-sized unit, 3 and 4 bedrooms homes. There's also, we'll talk a little bit about the relocation impacts of that. And then also there'll be general landscaping and courtyard improvements in the renovation. Again, overall 93 apartment homes across 5 buildings. We had use permit approved this summer. We are pursuing tax credits and bonds through Virginia Housing. That application was submitted last month. Here's the overview of the unit mix. So there's the current mix, and then, like I said, the additions will convert 18 2-bedrooms to a total of 14 3-bedrooms and 4 4-bedrooms to achieve those family-size units. And also, this is part of the tax credit program. There's an income verification process. All the residents who are income qualified and going through this will be guided through that process. And we're doing that in 2 phases: a preliminary income verification ahead of our the application, typically, except on this first one, and then one per the requirements of the tax credits when they are about ready to move back in. Again, we've been meeting a lot with residents, getting this information out, publishing some FAQs, trying to get this information, get everyone understanding what this process will be. To that point, we've been having multiple town hall resident meetings. Here's a picture from back in May, where we met with this initial section to go through what's going to happen, what's the plan, what are some of the elements of the relocation plan, what does it mean for them. We did that again last month to give them some updated information, as well as talk to the broader Barcroft. As you know, this is one of several phases that will come. So I wanted to make sure that Barcroft in general understands kind of the process and what it means for them and impacting on their homes. So again, just a brief summary. Wanted to spend most of the time tonight answering any questions on the relocation plan draft we had submitted. But in summary, again, we have Hannah Jacobson here tonight, who is with Housing to Home. Again, we hired them as a relocation specialist to really provide that dedicated resource to our residents. They completed interviews with a lot of the residents in this first phase this summer. Again, we understand a minimum of 120 days notice for on-site transfers. And again, one of our commitments at Barcroft is for these residents, we will relocate them on site. So we have enough vacancy to be able to move them into a similar unit while the renovations take place in their home, and then be able to move them back to their specific unit or a similar unit that on that section. And so we expect renovations to be approximately 6 months. They will be phased by building. All moving expenses will be paid for by us, and we will, again, have that dedicated specialist with housing to home. There's again, with tax credit deals, there are income thresholds. And, these, our commitments are to both those who are income qualified and those who are maybe over incomed. So our proposal that, again, when I get to this site-wide affordability, we've put out a proposal that will be considered by the county board in December, that any residents earning up to 80% AMI will be able to move back into a new or renovated unit. And so anyone earning over 80% in a relocation plan, we talk to that of, if you make over 80% and you don't, given the requirements of income qualification with a tax credit deal, if you do not qualify, we're committed to, again, pay for your move to an unrenovated home in Barcroft, because we will have unrenovated homes. Part of the site will be developed, so we will have some unrenovated homes for some time. And then if there are none available, we would move you into a market rate unit. But again, we want to take care of everyone at Barcroft. And like we said, all residents will return to a comparable home. Ideally, it's their unit, if they want to. The exception would be like in this phase where there are additions that we converted a 2-bedroom to a 3 or 4 bedroom. So they would no longer qualify to come back to a 3 or 4 bedroom at their current rent. But we have enough, again, vacancy to move them back into a renovated 2-bedroom for those families living in those 2 bedrooms that are getting the additions. And then just a quick summary here, and then we'll get to the questions and feedback. Overall site-wide affordability plan. Again, these are just our what we've proposed, and again, what we're going through the community process and getting Housing Commission and to the board in December. Number one, just again, our commitment to no displacement of any current residents by stabilizing rent for all. So we are committing that anyone below 80% will get a new unit and be able to move into a substantially renovated home and still pay their current rent capped at 3%. And then for those who aren't income or above 80%, we are committing to your rent is still capped, and you are paying your same rent, but you'll just be moved into a unrenovated unit, a different location on the project. We've also been working hard to offer to find ways to provide deepened affordability. There are no deepened affordable units in this phase that we're putting forth in the relocation plan, but there will be across the site 10% of the 1335, so 134. And then we just continue to work with the county as our partner and Amazon to figure out ways to continue to support residents through existing housing programs. And again, the thresholds that we've kind of placed through the 80%, again, in line with what we are able to do with income averaging and tax credit rules. Again, below 80%, not displaced, new home, or new or substantially renovated home, and they get to maintain their current rents capped at 3%. And again, the above 80, we won't, move them into an unrenovated home, but give them the same current rents and capped at 3%. And so that's, again, overview, but wanted to stop there and have a discussion, answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks, David. Quick question for you that I had before I turn it over to other commissioners. You said that residents are being moved to comparable units. What's the definition of a comparable unit? For instance, if you're in a 3-bedroom, are you being moved to a 3 or more bedroom?
Yeah, yes. So bedroom count. So we have 3 unit types on site. And so if you're in a 2-bedroom, you'll be moved to it. You'll get a 2-bedroom unit. You're gonna be able to stay in that same bedroom count.
Right, and it sounds like there are 3 unit types by bedroom, but are there like significant discrepancies between the size of the units in terms of square footage?
Not significant. No, there's again, any nuances. There's some differences, but not significant. And like I said, I do think the additions in this phase are unique, but not all phases will have these additions. So the additions are the only reason why we wouldn't move people right back to their unit. Otherwise, we absolutely can move them back to their unit.
Sure. Would you mind, I see someone has their hand, well, someone had their hand raised. Would you mind taking down the PowerPoint so I can see?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Any commissioners with questions or comments for David right now? Yeah, Ryan.
Two questions. Well, two, I guess 2 questions. One is, so I assume that all these affordability and relocation guidelines that you provided in your plan were negotiated with housing staff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so I assume housing staff will follow up with you to ensure compliance. And they're going to be the primary compliance agency to make sure that as you guys are moving forward, that compliance will be through Arlington County housing staff. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my second question was, when you say a renovated unit, are you talking primarily about, kitchens and bathrooms and things like that? Or are you guys actually going to get into the MEP, with, plumbing systems and whatnot? Are you doing behind the wall type renovations and upgrades as well? Or is it simply kind of cosmetic stuff?
No, it's very, I would say most of it's kind of the behind the wall stuff you don't see, like, all units are going to be rewired. The plumbing stacks can be replaced. The HVAC systems are, very extensive upgrade, going from a boiler system to an individual heat pump system. So it's a very pretty extensive program.
Okay, and I assume that all complies with, your deal with Amazon and the favorable financing that you guys have received. Your pro forma works out and all that, right?
Yep, and that's kind of the broader, what we're working toward in December is a lot of that, the financial terms, scope, how that's funded. But yes, that's all been what we've been working on this past year with Amazon and the county.
Okay, now obviously the reason I was asking is the financing environment. I mean, we've been talking about Barcroft for a long time. And the financing environment, since we first heard about it, a year and a half ago or whatever, is vastly different, as I can attest today, than it used to be. So I want to make sure that that's, your plans aren't jeopardized by a very different financing environment. So that's what I'm asking.
Yes, no, absolutely. That's been, I think, a big part of the challenge, but also part of the success of the proposal is that we are able to do all of this within the acquisition funds that were provided. So yeah, but you're right. There's been a lot of headwinds, but we've been working closely to figure that out.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I missed it. What's the timing of, it said Q2, and you guys don't know more specifically than that yet, right?
Yeah, it's depending on the exact timing of the Virginia housing closing, but our best guess right now is probably April.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, commissioners? Okay. Fantastic. Well, then. Oh, I'm sorry, Kirit. Go ahead, Kirit.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood about the capped at 3% in the graphic that you showed. Is that the 3% rent increase? Are we talking about the unit for the relocation or their ultimate unit if they're staying at the property? I mean,
yeah. So what our commitment is, the current rent levels, which is approximately 45% AMI. They will continue to get to pay that. Existing residents will continue to get to pay that and will not be increased more than 3% annually. So it's okay. Again, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that.
Okay, great. Hector has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, since it's the presentation is finished, that the only issue was tenants that may, if they want to relocate outside, they are going to receive a relocation, not a relocation payment. They're going to still receive relocation services to wherever they want to move if they so desire. And that's the only part that will be considered permanent. Otherwise, all tenants are doing temporary relocations. Now, if the commissioners have any input or any comments or recommendations for them, if they can let me know in the next couple of weeks so I can forward that, and then we can create the final draft before the approval of the plan. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Hector, the deadline for comments, can we set a specific day? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, let me see that. Hold on a second. I'll put it a deadline on the 21st
21st, okay.
of this
November.
month. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't think we've got any other questions. Thank you for the presentation, David. Appreciate it. I think we'll see you next month then.
Right. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have a presentation on CAF resident surveys from Saul from Bugada. Oh, yeah, he is here.
Yes, I'm trying to turn on my camera. I don't know if you're going to be able to see me, but
We can.
here I am.
Looking good.
All right, thank you. And Hector or Rolda, do you have a PowerPoint for it?
Yes, Hector, you want the presentation? Hector?
So maybe you can get started and we can catch up with the technology after.
Yeah, I can.
Sorry.
But I think there are a few slides that Rolda would cover at the beginning before I start my presentation. So
Okay.
Is this thing?
Hey.
It's there.
Great.
And then use manual. Can we get to the slide presentation, please? Okay, so as you recall, this came about. It's one of the recommendations from the initial committed affordable presentation that was done back in April, I believe. It's stemming from the Serrano. From the Serrano program. We've had this on the books for some time. So this survey was done. It was commissioned. Bugada being our contractor. Hector, can you advance the slides, please? Okay, the next one. Okay, so it's coming from this program, long-term strategies for improved oversight and tenant support, city properties. This is why we decided to do this survey. So we've conducted a periodic anonymous survey and other feedbacks of CAF residents across the portfolios. And the goal of this was to assess participating resident satisfaction with their living conditions, identify challenges the residents face, and explore opportunities for improvement. Next, please. And so this whole project was commissioned for Lugata to conduct the survey. And the aim was to survey approximately 5% of the CAF portfolio, which is about 11,000 of the 11,000 units that we have, 5%. And so, Saul, you can go.
Oh, yeah. So thank you so much, Rolda, for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity to present to you the results of our resident experience survey. As Rolda mentioned, we conducted the survey. It was Bugatti staff and volunteers through individual one-on-one interviews. When we did door knocking, if we couldn't find the resident at home, we left a letter indicating them why we came and visited their apartment, or knocked on their door and inviting them to either call us back, or we can come back and conduct the interview in person with them, or they could, over the phone. We also gathered feedback through focus groups and entered the information we were collecting using an online platform. We received 514 responses through this effort. So, well, as Rolda mentioned, the survey aimed to gauge the satisfaction of residents living in affordable housing, focusing on living conditions, community amenities, and the overall affordability. And all this while seeking to identify key challenges faced by residents, including maintenance issues, accessibility, safety, and difficulties encountered when applying or recertifying for their housing. So in the next slide, you see a map here. Oh, I'm sorry, if you could go back to the previous slide, it shows a map of the location of the properties where the surveys were conducted and responses received, as you can see in the distribution here. In the next slide, I'll cover the demographics. And there you go. So let's first begin by understanding who our respondents are. When it comes to gender, the majority of respondents identified as female at 59%, with 40% identifying as male and 0.39% as identifying as other. Regarding age, respondents' ages were distributed across various age groups, with the highest representation in the 35 to 44 years old age group at 30%. For race and ethnicity, 492 respondents provided this information. 62% identified as Hispanic, 24% Black or African American, 7% is white, and 3.66%, roughly 4% as Asian, and about 3% as other or multiracial. The household size, the number of people living in the households varied, with the majority of them having more than one person. And in the household composition, the most common household compositions included children or partners at 37%, and those who said that they had children was about 66%. On the unit size, the majority of respondents lived in 2-bedroom units at 54%, followed by 1-bedroom units at 29%, and others in 3-bedroom units at roughly 14%. In the next slide, I'll cover some of the key takeaways. The analysis of participants' responses reveals several significant findings. The overall satisfaction, respondents expressed satisfaction with their living conditions and community amenities, with 67% giving a satisfaction rating of 4 or 5. And this is on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the highest rating. Now, this is interesting, an interesting observation that the satisfaction was that high, but despite the residents expressing dissatisfaction with management and maintenance, as you'll see in the data here. So through the application process, 61.7, so almost 62% of the respondents said that they understand the income verification process very well. 8% indicated experiencing difficulties during the application or recertification process, as well as with wait lists, which could create some potential barriers. And later on, we're going to get to some recommendations about this. And so we also have awareness of wait lists. So a majority of respondents, 51%, reported having very little knowledge of wait lists for affordable housing units, for CAF units, while only 10% felt that they understood wait lists very well. With the waitlist experience, approximately 1/3 of respondents reported applying for housing via a waitlist, and approximately 1/3 of those on the waitlists received apartments from them. When it came to lease obligations, respondents' understanding of their lease agreements and their landlord's obligations received an average rating of 3.52 and 3.01 respectively, also on a scale of 1 to 5. If we continue to the next slide, we continue with findings and key takeaways. Affordability concerns. Despite the general satisfaction, a notable portion of the respondents raised concerns about the affordability of their units, particularly rent and utility costs. And you can find more information about this in the survey report. For utility costs, so a majority, 82% of respondents pay for electricity in addition to their monthly rent. And a few respondents reported an increase in their fixed utility costs in the past year. For maintenance issues, many residents reported challenges with maintenance services and were dissatisfied with response times and quality of repairs. Also, management's responsiveness to issues and service requests received a weighted average rating of 3.14, also on the scale of 1 to 5. So it was right in the middle. Parking satisfaction. The satisfaction with parking received a weighted average of 3, also out of 5 on the scale of 1 to 5. And we asked a question about resident councils or resident meetings or having resident meetings or tenant groups or tenants associations. And more than half of the respondents, at 58%, indicated that they would be interested in having a resident council or a tenant group at their properties. Let's see if we could go to the next slide. So we asked the participants, the residents, what are things that they like? Overall, residents express their satisfaction with the community in the following ways. Here you have a word cloud, which highlights a few of the positive comments or feedback received. The larger the text, the more often that attribute was mentioned in the process. And you can see here, quite quiet and calm was mentioned quite a lot as a common response, as far as also location, close to public transit, the close amenities, close to stores, community amenities. They like the space in their community or apartment complex. The affordability was something else that was mentioned, and as well as friendly neighbors. We could go to the next slide. So then we also asked, what are areas of improvement? And so here are some of those highlights and of things that the resident identified as they disliked. So this slide shows key concerns raised by the residents. Coming on top and tied with maintenance and repairs is pests, both at 23%, followed by management at 17%, smoking issues, as we heard earlier, and drugs at 9%, laundry rooms at 6%, safety and security at 4%, and issues with elevators at 3% for those properties that have elevators. In the next slide, I'm going to present some of the recommendations that, based on the survey findings, Bugada proposes the following recommendations. For affordability measures is to implement measures to address affordability concerns, such as regularly monitoring rents in the affordable housing market to ensure that programs and policies are effective and adjust them as necessary to respond to changing economic conditions. For waitlist education, we recommend that property management should proactively educate residents about the waitlist process and its implications. There should be clear communication on waitlist status, and that the county could monitor these wait lists. So that is highly encouraged. For lease agreement awareness, we recommend to implement measures to ensure that the residents fully understand their lease agreements and their rights and responsibilities as tenants. Enhance maintenance services. We recommend to improve maintenance services by streamlining response times and ensuring quality repairs to maintain resident satisfaction. And the county should make its housing information center more available for residents, complaints, and track complaints by owners and properties to identify trends and address them before the issues become too big and lead to disrepair and subpar living conditions. Management resident communication. Property management should aim to maintain an open and respectful communication with residents, addressing issues promptly and transparently. For safety and accessibility, UNETA recommends that property management should invest in safety measures and enhance accessibility in apartment complexes. For the application process, Bugatti recommends to simplify and expedite the application process to reduce barriers and ensure a smoother experience for potential residents when applying for an apartment and for current residents when recertifying for their units. For resident meetings, this is tenant councils, tenants associations, or any sort of tenant group. That is highly encouraged. Understanding that could be difficult to sustain and maintain, Bugatti recommends resident meetings, where the landlords should require management to hold regular quarterly meetings to foster community engagement, address concerns, and promote resident-centered initiatives and hear from the residents directly. And support services awareness. Bugatti recommends to increase awareness of county services and programs available to residents, such as the Tenant Landlord Commission, Arlington County Code Enforcement, Department of Human Services, and Department of Environmental Services, and the Housing Information Center. So with this, I conclude the presentation, but I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone who participated and contributed to this project, as Bugatti staff or volunteers, county staff who was also involved in this effort, and the residents who took the time to respond. Now, I'll hand it over back to Rolda. So thank you.
All right.
Oh, she's there. So I'm available for any questions. Well, Rolda comes back.
Oh, Barcroft. Okay, well, if they want to say something.
He just handed this over to you to talk about CAF stuff.
So in terms of strategies, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, they can. Review Bugatti recommendations and ensure that work is ongoing. For example, share report with CAF owners and partners, continue to support owners, property managers by encouraging and attending resident meetings, and continue education and outreach efforts to tenants and owners. So then this will continue to be ongoing work. And there will also be a report on the CAF strategy progress and the affordable housing dashboard. And that's something that has been developed as a part of our annual reporting progress on the housing plan and how we're making progress on various areas of the plan that we plan to put up on the website. And so anyone can access it, have access to it, and keep up with the changes as they're done.
That's not live yet, right?
We will be. Yeah.
Okay.
Resources permitting, conduct resident survey every 5 years. In guess you've gone through your recommendations now. Yeah.
I have, yeah.
Okay, so those are the next steps, and at this point, we'll be just questions, and if you have questions, if they are questions.
Yeah.
So the next, slide, please.
I have a few things, but I'll open it up to commissioners for questions and comments first. Kristen.
I guess I have a question about the pests and how that rate's so high. And I is when you talk to the 500 plus people, were you able to determine which of those 500, that 23% of people, was it focused on one building, or was that systemic across all the buildings, or were they sort of blind? You don't know where they came from.
Oh, we know because we went and visited the properties ourselves.
But you know exactly what they said?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And was it just one property, or was it multiple properties, or?
It came from multiple properties, so that was a common trend. Yeah.
So I think related to that question, I know this is, okay, so this is an anonymous survey, right? But you guys know where the complaints came from. Is there a way for you to provide to the TLC and to the housing division here the properties that were struggling with the most complaints that could be potential code enforcement issues?
It's something that can be produced. It was part of the data. It's just a matter of pulling it. You know.
Okay.
Mhm.
So what can we do? Is there a way for you to come to our next meeting with that data so that we can talk about acting on it?
Sure. Or we could run a report and send it to you guys.
Yeah, in advance of the meeting, that would be great. And then maybe if we have some questions, would you be available for 10 or 15 minutes at the next meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's plan on having that on the agenda rolled up. Any other commissioner? Yeah, Brian.
Sorry, you're gonna regret calling on me.
I
All right, so I used to run.
never regret calling.
I used to run I used to run a real estate analysis group, so I'm very familiar with some of the stuff you've done. I know it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, especially when you start with demographics and then you go into resident surveys and you have to analyze all the data. But I'd like to maybe point out, so I first of all, thank you for all your work and the team that put this together. I know it's a lot of work, but I think you guys stop short of some really useful information, both for you, the commission, housing staff, and maybe you have it. I realize that you might have distilled this down into a PowerPoint presentation, so there might be a much longer report that we haven't seen. And so if that's the case, then you can disregard some of what I'm about to say. But my first comment would be, anytime you talk about demographics or any objective statistics, you got to compare it to a larger population. And what I mean by that is, you pointed out, for example, gender or race or household size or things like that in the report or in the survey respondents, but you didn't give us any context about where that compares to the county or the state overall, right? And so it's hard for me to say, oh, well, 2.6 people in a household is actually bigger than normal or smaller than normal. So I can't really make any meaningful conclusions about that. I'm guessing that, the gender thing, for example, if we were just to assume that it's 51-49 women versus men with a small percentage of other, maybe that would be an interesting thing to take away from that. So you see my point about comparing to a context. The other thing too, I would say, is in some of the ratings that are on there, and I think this is probably where when I stepped out for a second, you guys were going, but it might be focused on one particular property that might be skewing the overall results down. But to me, what's most important is seeing, kind of, again, more context with that, which would be, in this case, probably trends, right? So when you said something was 3.1 and that's in the middle, actually out of 5, 2.5 is in the middle. So 3.1 is, over 7, or it's north of 60%, 62%. That might be better than you would expect, but it's helpful to see that kind of stuff over time, so if things are getting better or worse. And then at the end, when you made your conclusions, basically you said everything needs to be done better. And so I don't disagree with that, but if you're going to target something For example, it seemed like the biggest area for improvement or opportunity for improvement were resident comments about maintenance and repairs, right? That was the biggest source of complaints and things that they didn't like. So, in my experience, owning and managing apartments, there's only two ways to incentivize management to do their job. One is with a carrot and the other is with a stick. The carrot is some way to tie their compensation to resident satisfaction or their actual performance of their job, right? Instead of just a fee that they earn no matter what. The stick would be enforcement issues that you've talked about already, whether it's code enforcement or whatever. And, ownership, whether it's private or, semi-public ownership, would then be incentivized to get their property manager to perform better. And so, so I think your suggestions are good suggestions, but I would definitely make a recommendation that they be much more targeted. Start with the big picture stuff like this maintenance and management issue, and find ways to do that. I think we've been talking about that at this commission for as long as I've been on it, which is almost 2 years now, where you've got resident complaints about management, but no real effective way to make management respond to those complaints. And so I think this is a really good start, but I think you guys have a long way to go to really make this effective and accomplish a lot of the goals that you guys have outlined here as part of your conclusions. I think you're headed in the right direction, but I would just, and I'm not trying to be critical here, I'm trying to offer you ways to maybe really realize, the point of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think there's a treasure trove here of useful data. And so I think, from my perspective, we want to dig in more into it, to one of Ryan's points, and related to a comment that Kristen made earlier, if there's, I don't know how you sampled, right? There's a number of I think you listed 34 properties. You may have gotten one from one property and like 17 from another. It would be helpful. And so one of my main questions here is, with this being anonymous, what are you allowed to share with us? What's allowed to be public? Obviously, the names of the people, it should be de-anonymized. But I don't see a reason that the properties should be anonymous, and we should be able to take that data and make it actionable for code enforcement and for the TLC to think about where should we be sending, flyers to come and make public comment at the TLC. Like those are the sorts of things that, and I know this isn't necessarily your job, but this is what I'm thinking about here. So we've got that agenda item for next month. I'd love to see, if you can give us a fairly detailed report telling us everything that you're allowed to tell us about where these properties are, or which properties you surveyed, how many you got from each of them, and what were the major complaints at each of the properties that were dominant. Because then we can actually do something about those issues. It's not just, people had pest issues. If it's all coming from
One property.
Yeah, if it's coming from one property, then we could do something about that. We can put pressure on the property, and they probably know they have an issue already, but they may not realize the size of it.
Or they're not incentivized to do anything about it.
Exactly. And, we've talked about this in the past. I'm not opposed to the TLC, like talking about and voting on taking out an ad in Arl Now and saying, an open letter to X property about issues that we've identified through this very comprehensive and detailed survey. I think that's a totally legitimate action that the TLC can take. So let's you and me, so after this, get together with Rhoda and some others and talk about, and I'll take any feedback that commissioners have after the meeting. But in the next couple of weeks before upcoming meeting, I want to dig into this more, see what we can actually do here, because this is one of the most valuable things that's come across the TLC's desk in a long time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up to what you were just saying too?
Yeah.
So when this survey was put together and you got results out of it, what were you hoping to get out of the report other than the survey itself? Where were you hoping to take the conclusions of the report?
Well, the purpose was to gather the resident experience, but at the same time, collect all this data that could be used by stakeholders, policymakers, by the county to when they're, they making decisions, right?
Okay, so your goal was to state it another way. Your goal was the result of the survey, and then you're going to give it to groups like the Tenant Landlord Commission and others to take action. Is that correct?
Yeah, the data could be used.
Yeah.
Used by any stakeholder, yeah.
And I want to be, I mean, Ugata and those who worked on the survey were paid for this, and you guys are not the county. So,
Right.
I don't want to ask you to do work that you're not being compensated for, but to the extent that we can get the information and then us use it, as the arm of the county, that's where I want to go with this. So, yeah.
Kristen.
Okay. Yeah. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think something I didn't say, but as you all continue to talk, it really came to light, and I want to say it out loud before I forget, was that knowing what properties they are and being able to determine maybe to try to isolate it, there could be two bigger problems. One is, are they all using the same vendor? There are a lot of fly-by-night pest companies out there who will take advantage of, particularly of an absentee landlord, and take advantage if there isn't a property manager on site to, walk with them and make sure that the bait traps are actually being checked and that they're putting bait back in them. And then the other thing is are there things that are outside of their control that need greater attention, such as standing water? It's maybe on county property or on a neighbor's property, or if they abut a single family housing community that's not well maintained. We don't always want to put it all on the residents or all on the landlords, but knowing what properties they are and sort of looking at the geography and looking into who they do business with and so forth might help us, because it seems to me that that's incredibly high percentage of people who are dissatisfied with their pest control service that appears to be something that could be managed.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kristen, particularly about the vendors. That's some next level thinking that I don't think I would have come to. So great comments.
We did have a question. Was the survey offered in multiple languages?
So we had interviewers go around, and primarily we spoke English and Spanish.
Okay.
We were able to get by with that. A lot of the respondents spoke either or language.
Thank you. Yeah, that tracks with the demographic breakdown you shared. I just wanted to make sure. And then I think also it was mentioned that a few people were concerned about fixed utilities, their utility costs going up, hoping to get a more concrete number. Was that like 3? Was that 20%? Seems like would be, I just would like to know more concrete number. I don't know if you have that or if it's something you can provide and follow up, but interested to learn more.
Yeah, I don't have that right now with me, but that is something that was in the data collected. Residents are concerned. Some of them did share how much their rent had increased. There's actually a rent analysis in the full report that the county produced as part of this project.
I was gonna ask if I imagine there was a full report. Did we receive the full? Okay, so you can send us the full report.
Yeah. And procedurally, does the full report that was made, does it have the underlying raw data in it, or it does, Rolda?
I don't know.
Oh.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, the underlying raw data is available. I believe that some of the comments received by the open response comments are included towards the end of the report as an appendix. But the raw data, if we did the work, we presented the data to the county. A lot of it can be pulled from that, like, what you've requested, the name of properties and responses and all that. Yeah, to look at trends. Yeah, there may have been a property here and there that was the one response, but the majority of them did include a number of responses. Now, you
Right.
can't really generalize, right? Because you may have a property that was one response. There may be
Yeah.
another that was 5 responses, but there may be others that had like 17 responses. But it's just to provide a general idea of what is going on.
Yeah, that's why we want to drill down a little bit more. So after the meeting's done, first step, and I'll contact you about talking about more specific questions, maybe in the raw data ahead of the next agenda item in December. But I think distribution of the full report to all the commissioners as soon as you finish here tonight or tomorrow morning is fine.
Yeah. Well, that's all submitted to the county. I don't know who from the county could. Or
I will probably Jennifer and Russ.
Okay, well, yeah, just in the next couple of days would be great. I had a couple of interesting comments if anybody else had things. Okay, I noticed that around 2/3 had at least one child and maybe more, while only 56% were in a 1-bedroom. So there's an interesting mismatch. Well, I mean, potentially. I don't know that. I just thought that was interesting. You got a much higher percentage with at least one kid. Presumably there's 2 adults in some of these and one in others, but depending on the age of the child, like, 1 bedroom. Okay. The primary issues on management and maintenance, you said that those were the 2, but when you broke down the specific concerns that people had, I didn't see management in them. I saw at the top 23% passed in. I don't have it in front of me. 23% passed in, 23% maintenance. How did you come to that conclusion that management was one of the top issues?
Well, it was dissatisfaction. What we heard a lot from people were like, okay, like I mentioned, it was interesting to hear from people giving an overall satisfaction of 4 or 5, a high satisfaction rating. We found that interesting, and we asked some, and one of the survey takers tells me, hey, Saul, what's interesting about this is that they're overall satisfied because at the end of the day, this is their home, right? They respect that space. But at the same time, their satisfaction comes when interacting with management staff or with the maintenance, being that it was ignored or it just took forever to receive a service whenever they put a work order.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Or not excellent, but thank you for answering that. The recommendations, to Ryan's point, I think it would be helpful if we could drill down more, and this can be done before the next meeting so that we can talk about it in a little bit more detail. But it seemed like there were some next steps from housing, and then you have these broader recommendations. What I'd love to do at the end of this, in conjunction with all the other stuff we've talked about, is send a letter to the county board and say, listen, here are 2 or 3 very detailed policy ideas that we can recommend based on this hard data that we have here. And, we don't want to overload them because then nothing will get done. But if we can get a couple of detailed things that they can just take and plug and play, and whether it is voted on favorably or not is up to them, but we can at least make some detailed recommendations. And that's something I'd like the TLC to do with your help and with housing's help. So let's be thinking about that as well in advance of the next meeting.
Can I throw out a really wild idea? The thing I know we always focus on here at the TLC are CAF units and some of this data from CAF units, right? So this was 11,000 CAF units, and they went out and did a random sampling of those units, right? But that's a small proportion of the overall apartment stock in the county. I think it'd be really interesting, to be very candid with you, if there was a survey done of some similar scope of selected market rate properties And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the same level of satisfaction was higher, lower, or the same. It might even be better at the CAF properties.
It would
than
be
at
really
market rate.
interesting.
So my point is, we don't really know there's a problem until we can see that there's a problem. There's always something in my house that I own that I would always like to be a little nicer and a little better, right? And so without having, again, this is where I was kind of preaching a little bit earlier about context for some of this data. Like if they're getting, what was the overall rating of satisfaction? It's close to 4 out of 5, right?
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so about 4 out of 5 or whatever. Sorry if I'm not getting the exact number. But I mean, if you did a broader survey of the overall market in general and it was 3 out of 5, you should say, man, the CAF's pretty good. Not to say there isn't always room for improvement, but that's where data like this, and I'm sorry, it's just a bugaboo of mine because this is what I used to do and train other people how to do. You got to have context in order to come to these conclusions. So, I hope that this survey is done again periodically, and you might consider broadening the scope a little bit so you can get some context.
So
Yeah.
I want to bring you back to how this came about.
Yeah.
So the intention was really very much to focus in on CAF properties.
No, that's not
CAF properties.
my point.
So that's where this is coming from, and so that's.
No,
Yes, the intention is to possibly do it, on a regular basis.
But-
But I understand what you're saying in terms of comparing this size or this portfolio, this group of properties versus things, but I don't think you'd be comparing.
We've also got census data. Like, I take your point, like Bugatti wasn't commissioned to take a broader, a 5% survey of also market rate units. So that might be out of scope. Maybe there's another survey that's been done in Arlington that has that data though. And similarly, I think to your point, we have census data. So, that's
For
public.
demographics, that's-
Exactly. For demographics, we can just compare it down the line.
That's easy.
And again, that, I don't know what the RFP looked like for Bugatti. So I don't want to criticize that you're not
Well,
you're probably doing your job, I think.
The intent was to collect the resident experience, to get that feedback, the
Yeah.
additional demographics. It's just that we were interested in reporting who we were interviewing in the households, that's just an additional piece of data. But obviously you have better data through the census.
Right.
When you look at demographics, yeah. But here was just to provide a brief understanding of who we were talking to, but the intent and real purpose was to gather their feedback about how they're feeling, what their experience is like living in affordable housing. That was the core of it.
My only point is, if people are feeling better than the average person not living in affordable housing, I'm not suggesting that the point was to go out and survey the whole market or even a part of the whole market. My point is to make the CAF data more meaningful and more actionable, you have to have context. If it's 3 out of 5 for the general population, but it's 4 out of 5 for CAF, then you might feel pretty good about that, right? Whereas I know we all hear the worst of the worst. Nobody comes to the Tenant Landlord Commission to say, my apartment's the best. I wish, nobody does that. They all come and they tell us horror stories about Toronto.
What do you mean? Sarah had public comment earlier
Okay.
today, so I'm just joking.
it
was bad.
That could be one of the recommendations.
Yeah.
Coming forward after the funding to do this, because that's what you need to
Provide some context,
Like-
right?
Right.
do that.
And it's,
And I don't know how expensive this survey was. I don't know if that's public information or not, but every 5 years, seems like we could do a little bit better than that. I don't know how much funding is set aside.
when trends are important in all this.
Well, that's
Trend
my
is part
point,
of the
yeah.
context.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you know if you're doing better or worse if you do it every 5 years?
And this is the first time.
This
This
is
is-
very
this
good
is
time.
the-
Well, I know, so I'm just saying if every 5 years.
But yeah, that's one of the things that we could recommend. We could say, this is important enough data. And what would be great is if we could go to the county board and say, we've taken XYZ actions based on this hard data.
Yeah.
We can only do that if this survey is happening every year or every 2 years. And we need funding for that. So I feel pretty optimistic about this report and the things that we can do with it.
Yeah, I will say it is definitely, like, if I were a renter in a CAP unit and I was surveyed, I would want it to be the very first step with the actionable items. To your point, like, great first step, really great to have the data. Now it's on us to hold people accountable, make recommendations that are actionable.
Yeah.
So that this isn't an instance of, a work survey that goes out and then nothing in your company changes and then they ask again in 5 years and it's like, why are the results the same, so.
In fact, I think this might be, we've got two subcommittees. One is sunsetting, because it's just about finished its recommendations, the ADR subcommittee, but, we've traditionally had 2 or 3. This might be something where the work is that important that we create a subcommittee just for this. So anyway, that's where my head's at. I don't think I've got anything else. Anything else?
One of the next steps, Will, that you shared was to share this report with the CAF property owners.
Yes, share the report with CAF property owners and partners and continue to support owners and property managers.
And then when is that sharing happening? Do you have an?
So no, I don't have details in terms of what's the timeline for all of this and how it's.
I have 2 follow-up questions. So that one is for the CAF owners. Would the report be tailored to the results of their specific property?
But that is something.
Yeah,
And
I think we're trailblazing this right now. So.
Yeah.
And then I assume that the recommendations will come out in that form too. One of the things that we can think about including that to the CAF owners is I think the application and the income verification process that is run by the owner. It's not the county, right? It's the property. So best if that is a streamline that is here are the best practices or whatever that looks like to help those property owners get there. That can be included in sending that back.
Definitely. Okay. Everybody good? I mean, obviously we could go all day about this and I think we will continue to talk about it extensively. But really good presentation, really excited about the potential here. Thank you for doing this work. So it's really important. You've always been a huge asset to TLC. So I want to just thank you since I've been here since 20.
Of course, the goal was to collect the data and present it to you all and to help with your decision making.
Yeah.
To see it,
Policy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know that we have any subcommittee reports.
I did not do my follow-up. You don't. Okay, well, my update was that Rolda reminded me that I had follow-up actions from sharing the recommendations from you. So the next steps we have on those, because I went over them verbally and quickly, is to understand what is a higher lift from county staff through doing that, and also what our commission would prioritize out of those, because that is not likely that all of them will be implemented and within a time frame. So
can we get that discussion and vote for the next on the next agenda for December?
yes, so I will send out what I needed to do that I did do is I will send out the recommendations that I shared.
Okay.
After this meeting. And so we can do that.
All right. And again, commissioners, if you have thoughts or comments on any of the things we've talked about, I am always eager to hear your feedback. And, I don't have a lot of the thoughts and experience that you guys do. And it's really helpful when planning agenda items and pushing the work forward, outside of the monthly meetings to get your feedback outside of the meetings as well. Thank you. Anything from you, Rolda or Hector? Oh, yeah, sorry.
So yes, we had quite a bit of feedback from various areas on the 2 companies that we had last month. Let's deal with the Shawnee Buckners, which is the property here at HC's property, Woodbury Park. So I think I forwarded that. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but those were the comments or responses that were provided by HC Management Company to the complaints as of today, as of Monday. So there was a final, connection with her. So her comments were that the trash has been better. She's been seeing more cleaning. She did meet with management about her rent and the issues that she wanted to have clarified. And there will be another follow-up meeting on that. And then the upstairs neighbors, things worse than before. So that is going to be an ongoing issue. So she was advised to keep a log of when these disturbances occur and to reach out to management about it.
There hasn't hit, I don't know if it's related to it.
She was also told that, this is apartment living and some amount of, there will be some amount of noise. So, yes, Hector?
Yeah, I wanted to let the commission know about by right relocation that it's happening. It's Fairview Apartments. They gave a notice of termination of lease to all their tenants. Since it's a by right relocation, they don't have to do anything extraordinary, but to give 30-day notices, they are giving them until the end of December to vacate, and they are giving them a relocation payment of $2,500 to all tenants. Since
What's the
it's a
address
by
of that
right
property?
relocation, we have notified Bugada of the issue, so they may be able to assist, and also the Department of Human Services if they are approached by them, so they will be prepared.
What's the property address, please?
It's on at the end of 9th Street. I don't recall it from the top of my head, sorry.
It's 8 units, 9 units?
It's 9 units total to
What's the name of the
that
property again?
Fairview Apartments. It's close to Walter Reed Community Center.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that was an additional item, but I wanted to also had another person that the Sharon Hall. And a lot of work has taken place on the various issues identified by Sharon Hall. There were issues with her mother,
Right.
having accommodations such as grab bars installed and flooring and all of that. Those areas have been taken care of.
Good.
Whether, fully satisfied, that's up in the air.
She responded saying that those have been taken.
So that those have been taken.
Oh, good.
Grab bars have been installed and that the flooring, something is done in terms of making it smoother. Some flooring, maybe not uneven flooring.
Yeah.
She was also given a lot of assistance from other sources, such as the Aging and Disability Advisory Commission, not commission staff, the Department of Aging and Disability. So she was referred to legal services, the Justice Center, also Bugata, and the issue with her recertification that has actually been documentation she needed to provide and also sign. Those have been completed. So I think you can say that Ms. Hall has been referred to several other resources, and as a caretaker, she probably needs some expert. Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. And a pretty quick turnaround too, since our last meeting. So much she came, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, fantastic. Well, any other questions, comments, concerns from commissioners?
Just make one comment. You might want to think about how this could apply to us going forward. As somebody who manages real estate every day, multifamily, Section 8 property in California, and seeing where we are with the general economy and the financing environment and things of that nature, which I've been doing this 25 years. I've never seen it this bad. Unfortunately, it's going real estate and how its effects on some of the economy are lagging indicators, right? And so, so I would suspect that over the next year or so, we're going to enter a much more challenging economic environment than we've seen in the last 10 years, even more so than COVID, when there was a lot of federal government money made available and things like that, because normal economic slowdown, you don't see the same kind of emergency assistance. And so I'm concerned that, especially since we deal with a lot of more vulnerable people whose housing insecurity and things of that nature, that we're going to see more of that. And if there's a way that we can think of to get ahead of the curve a little bit, at least to protect Arlingtonians who are more vulnerable in their rental housing than others, I just like to throw that out there, because I can tell you from my seat down here on the ground, it's coming. And unfortunately, people are going to lose jobs, and when they lose jobs, they can't afford to pay the rent, and things of this nature start to tick up, in my opinion, over the next 6 to 12 months. And so if there's a way for us to think proactively about that rather than reactively, things I do think is a part of it. But that might be something to think about too, as you're thinking about strategic planning getting into 24,
Right.
because that's coming.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to know.
Sorry.
No, it's a downer.
Damn.
It is what it is.
If there's a way we can help to lessen the blow.
Yeah, let's start thinking about that. And yeah, I feel like we've been anticipating the drop off after the federal funding for a long time, and maybe now it's finally all coming together. So,
and federal funding is just a drop in the bucket compared.
Right.
When you raise interest rates on everybody, it's kind of this, rising tide floats all boats, or sinks all boats.
Yeah.
And, when you raise interest rates on everybody, it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, that stuff trickles down, and the people who are most vulnerable can least afford to withstand it. So,
yeah. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you for attending the November 8th, 2023 Tenant Landlord Commission meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
second that.
Second.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And
Thank
enjoy
you.
the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm always the like